Do you feel like shame was like a huge driver here? Because I think it's a very natural part of eating disorders from people I've spoken to. Shame is such a huge topic that comes up.
I don't even know if the shame was about the eating disorder, though. I think the shame was like me feeling like, what the fuck am I doing being alive?
Okay, I promise I'm actually kind of fun at parties. Having said that, there's going to be a lot of topics in this podcast that might be quite challenging. If you feel like you are not ready to listen to discussions of food, eating, body image issues, even honest conversations about sex and dating and depression and anxiety and all of these fantastic things that I've been dealing with over the last 10 years, then no hard feelings. The way I like to monitor my own content consumption is I say to myself, am I ready for this content? Just because I found it doesn't mean that it is necessarily right for me at this moment. So if you feel like it's time to switch off, no problem. Come back to it when you're ready. But if you do feel like this is the kind of stuff you want to talk about, let's jump in to the first ever episode of Second Helpings. I was supposed to start this podcast over a year ago. I had the equipment, I had the idea. I was talking to friends who were podcast producers about my ideas and who I could potentially pitch to. I even had a co-host and a list of episode ideas. I thought, this is definitely something I want to be working on. This is my passion project. And this is the industry I work in. I am a podcast critic. No pressure. And I'm also a writer. So I thought this is a really great medium for me to gab my way through something that has been a 10-year experience. I would say my eating disorder started when I was about 16 years old. I am now 27. So I've been in this for a really long time. And I knew that writing about it had kind of left me hitting a wall. I wanted to have discussions. I wanted to get pushback. I wanted to also joke about it. I think there's something about having a mental illness for 10 years that really makes you appreciate the humor in any given situation. I mean, I literally used to drink charcoal. And if you don't find that funny, then I'm afraid I can't help you. I had all these things lined up. And I was telling people that I was going to launch this beginning of 2024. And it never happened. Because truthfully, I relapsed. And I relapsed really, really quite badly in a way that I didn't even recognize that I was relapsing until I was on the other side of it. And the reason it was so difficult was because I wasn't doing any of the behaviors that were recognizable to me, you know, like the bad behaviors, the stuff that I had talked to my 6 or 7 therapists about, the stuff that my parents had learned to watch out for, the things that my friends were nervous about. Because I was eating 3 meals a day. I was getting up and going to work. I was hitting my deadlines. I wasn't over-exercising. I was seeing friends. I was going out. I wasn't monitoring what I was eating. I wasn't even body checking. Everything seemed on the outside to be completely normal. But the thing about having an eating disorder for 10 years is that it grows and morphs with you. The behaviors that I was doing when I was 16 and 17 are nowhere near anything like the behaviors that I have now and the way that the illness expresses itself now. Because I'm a grown-up now. I have much better emotional regulation capabilities. And being able to recognize that and say, okay, well, I'm out of quote unquote the danger zone in terms of I'm not going to let my weight fall below a certain level doesn't mean that I'm okay. And I think I had been ignoring that for a really long time. I wasn't getting, I couldn't bear getting out of bed. I used to be a 6 a.m. early riser. The rise and grind was one of my favorite diversion tactics. from dealing with my own feelings. And I went into it hard. My morning routine, gosh, Andrew Huberman would study it. It was immaculate. And there I was, 5, 6 years later, having gone through this so-called recovery, and I didn't want to get out of bed. I would sleep as long as possible, in almost like a coma-like sleep, because I was avoiding something and I didn't know what that thing was. I'm still struggling, to be honest, to understand what that thing is. All I knew is that if anybody asked me, I would say, I'm the happiest I've ever been. And yet, any small situation, I would cancel my plans and I would sit in my room and cry for hours. I didn't have any hobbies. Nothing was fun. I was a workaholic. I would work from the moment I woke up at like 9 or 10 in the morning until 9 or 10 at night. I took on more and more work just to avoid having to deal with any of these other issues. And my next big idea was, hey, why don't I start a podcast to talk about all the fantastic work I've been doing to recover? And I still stand by that original idea. I do think that as a space in content, eating disorders are not talked about in ways that I fully recognize in terms of my own experience. They tend to revolve around advocacy and body positivity, or they specifically go into things about meditation and journaling and healing. And while I find those two resources incredibly important and really interesting, and I know they've helped thousands of people, neither of those things really help me. I'm just going to be completely blatantly truthful about that. The things that helped me the most were Chardonnay, going out with friends, and getting out of my own way. And I say that with the greatest seriousness. I'm not trying to take the piss here. But having said that, I felt like a complete sham. I felt like I was coming into a project with all of these learnings and all of this quote unquote 10 years of fucking wisdom that I had built up from years of therapy and years of, getting myself out of anorexia diagnosis, getting over a couple months of bulimia, getting over, various different health issues, bloating, indigestion, not being able to eat most food groups, chronic overexercise, you name it, I have dealt with it. I promise you. And I came out of that and I went, I feel amazing. I have more health and friends and opportunities than I've ever had in my whole life. And I really want to tell people that they can do this without supplements, and they can do it without, going through rigorous meditation practices or replacing their bad habits with quote unquote good habits that they become just as obsessed with, right? We all know that person that gave up alcoholism, or they gave up their eating disorder and became an ultramarathon runner, right? We know those people. I really respect those people. That's not my experience. So I wanted to give an alternative. I wanted to talk about things from a different angle. And yet there I was, relapsing. So I put it off. I put off the podcast. I put it into a box. It was always in the back of my head. People kept asking me about it. I kept coming up with ideas of other episodes and other interesting people I wanted to talk to. I have some really fun guests in the roster, some wonderful people that I've met in that year who have really changed my perspective, not just on this sense of perfectionism I was applying to my life, but also this sense of you can't just continuously believe that the place that you're at is the final destination, right? Yes, I know more than I knew yesterday. That doesn't mean I'm finished growing right now. And the best thing that somebody said to me was, I said, wanted to do this podcast, but I feel like crap. And I don't think I have anything interesting to say because I feel like a hypocrite trying to give people recommendations. And I would feel like a sham. And they said to me, nobody wants to hear you tell them how to be perfect at recovery. What they want to hear is how to just recover like a human being. And that was the thing that made me keep going with it. So yeah, a year on, here we are at the first episode, trying to make sense of an experience that has not only defined my life, but irrevocably shaped the way that I see the world and the way that I see my place in the world. The value I put on my family and my friends. Is my relationship with food perfect? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Do I love food? Yeah, totally. I'm a big foodie. I love wine. I love food. Did I cry yesterday? Because having an eating disorder, to me, feels kind of like an addiction, right? Except it's the kind of addiction where you have to encounter your substance every single day in social situations. You know, if somebody's got a problem with alcohol, they can just stay away from alcohol. It's not easy, but in principle, you can just stay away from alcohol. You just stay away from drugs. If you have an eating disorder, you have to face the thing that sets you off, the thing that triggers you every single day. If you want friends, you are going to restaurants with them. You are going to cafes. You are part of the little treat culture. Like, girl dinner is just how I eat normally. And it's awful. It's awful because it's tiring and nobody appreciates just how tiring it is unless they're in it themselves. And so if you get anything out of this show, it's an appreciation that you are definitely not alone in this. And this is something that I don't want any of us to feel ashamed about, number one. Talking about it, talking about this experience is the thing that gives us agency and is the thing that gives us power. Because this isn't something that you recover from and then you put it under the bed. You don't brush it under the carpet. This is something that if you want to, you can carry with you for the rest of your life in a really positive way. This is your why. This is the thing that gives you the fire underneath your butt to make your life happen. And that might sound really cheesy, and this isn't like a self-help fucking podcast, but I want to give you a little bit of an insight into why I'm doing this. So what is Second Helpings actually going to be about? Well, obviously it's going to be me talking a lot about my experience of an eating disorder, a lot of the bullshit that I went through, a lot of the things I learned along the way. I'm going to be joined by my absolutely incredible co-host. Her name's Maria Wick.
For a lot of the work that, you know, I've been doing, I've sort of started to shift away from focusing too much on why did this happen and into sort of, okay, what can I do with this now? Kind of, as you were talking about, with realizing that, okay, I have some power. I mean, obviously you've always had a power because it takes a lot of power too. Upholding an eating disorder as well. It takes a lot. But realizing that you have the power to, you know, affect your actions as well, I think, yeah, it's really important. So I've tried to I've noticed myself sort of shifting in the tiny amount of work I do with it in that direction rather than trying to dissolve, like, what was the reason? Because it's too complicated. There are too many reasons. Like, yeah. And you can get stuck in that for a long time.
She is a clinical psychologist, and she's also a model, actor, singer. So she has a really interesting perspective on these issues. She's both been in them herself to a certain extent and also can reflect on them from a clinical perspective, which I really appreciate because I am not a medical professional. I am merely somebody who is very, very good at turning food into a medicalized disorder, which I think is a skill that I should have put on my CV, the same way that I put getting Taylor Swift tickets on my CV. But what can you do? We will also be joined on the podcast by some of my very good friends.
I had shame. Whoa, buzzword there, shame. Shame. Take a drink if we're playing a drinking game. I had a shame in myself when I lost the weight, being all like, oh, I'm skinny now, yay, you know, and I'm like, wait, isn't that like against everything that I have been preaching? And, you know, like, I would get like the compliments from people, members of my family, like, oh, you're so skinny now. And I'm like, yeah, I am. Interesting, you're right. It definitely did it didn't derail, but it definitely altered the way that I had to kind of think about myself and being like, okay, am I really body positive? Am I really like plus size anymore or whatever? And, you know, and it did kind of fuck with me. But I will say that, like, at my lowest weight, which was last year around December, I was my most unhealthy.
When a lot of people think about romance and online dating and stuff like that, especially on social media, it's usually from a woman's perspective. And then anytime you hear men talk about it, it's usually the incels. They're like, fuck these women, or like pickup artists are like, if you want to get all these bitches, you got to do this and this and this. I don't know. I think there needs to be more healthy representation.
God, if I could tell you how cool my friends are. I am absolutely like mid cool compared to them. They have such interesting perspectives on not only like eating issues and body image, but also feelings about their race, their identity, what it's like being a content creator, and having the thing that you are fetishized for being your source of income, breaking free from, you know, working corporate and taking your life into your own hands. I've had some really interesting discussions over the last few months, and I am so blessed to actually have an excuse to talk to these people about their interesting lives. So stay tuned for that. Lastly, just wanted to say thank you so much for listening. And I promise that whatever you're going through, you're absolutely not alone. I will be doing Q&A episodes, both by myself and with Maria, and also be putting some slightly more sensitive eating disorder content into a free members group, where if you really want to get into the nitty gritty of it and not just maybe talk about it in a slightly more laughy, jokey, satirical way, then we will be covering that too. I want this to not just be a podcast, but be a community. And I know people talk about that all the time, but I'm going to do my best to make it actually happen. I will catch you on the next episode. You're doing great. Speak to you soon.
Hello, it's Maria here. Thanks for listening to today's podcast episode. If you want to check out the resources regarding what we talked about today, check out the show notes. Bye.